Okay, welcome back, everyone, or I guess if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. Um, I'm Sam Milanowski. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Miles City. I am also the Floodplain Administrator, and this is our Flood Awareness Day. This is the second presentation of the series that we have. Um, this is Tracy Sears with DNRC will be presenting on flood insurance changes now and in the future.
Great. Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone. And good evening again. Um, as Sam mentioned, my name is Tracy Sears. I'm with the Montana DNRC. I'm out of the Helena office, and I work in the floodplain program with DNRC. Now, I will disclose I am not an insurance guru. We deal with insurance as part of the National Flood Insurance Program. I know there's been the person that usually had put on some of these insurance programs with FEMA just recently retired. So I'll try to answer these questions or try to provide information to the best of my ability here. There have been some slight changes that were supposed to go through, and I haven't been able to kind of get clarifications. I'll talk about them towards the end, um, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with some updates here in the next few months as well. But the flood insurance part of the National Flood Insurance Program, it's just one of the four parts of the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program is made up of really four parts, including flood insurance, but it also includes mapping, understanding where the risk is for the highest flood risk is for the community. And then it also includes regulations, how to manage those high risk areas. And then mitigation. Is there things that can be done to reduce flood losses and damages throughout the community, or maybe one person is looking at doing mitigation on their property or their structure. So insurance is again just one of the four parts that make up the National Flood Insurance Program. So things that we kind of hear with folks about homes in the floodplain are required to get flood insurance. Not necessarily. If somebody owns their home outright, they may make that decision not to purchase flood insurance. When it is required is if someone has a federally backed mortgage and their structure is actually located in that 100-year floodplain shown on those floodplain maps. And in the previous presentations, we talked about how there's about 73,000 river miles in the state of Montana, but there's only about a little bit over 12,000 miles that are actually mapped. It's those areas that are in the map floodplain that have the mandatory purchase requirement for flood insurance. So there are different things that you can do. You might be able to prove that your home is above that base flood elevation. But one thing I do want to point out, though, is at any time if somebody has a loan out, whether if they're outside the floodplain, their lender can require flood insurance at any time. So just kind of be aware, not everybody may be required to get flood insurance, but if you have a loan, know that if it's a federally backed mortgage and in 100-year floodplain, it's mandatory, it's required to get flood insurance. But if you're outside that 100-year floodplain or high risk area, you still, depending on your lender's preference, they still may require you to purchase flood insurance. And the reason for that is they know that flooding is the #1 natural disaster in the United States. There's also a 1 in 4 chance of flooding during a 30-year mortgage. These are certain figures that we're throwing out all willy-nilly. This is actual information that they have knowledge of after all these disasters. They've gathered this information, not just they being, FEMA, but also all these institutions that kind of use the National Flood Insurance Program or the National Insurance, the NFIP program is super important to what they do. And real estate agents, developers, this is information and this is a program that they're really keyed into. There's certain industry standards that actually even exceed the NFIP standards and any higher standards we may have in Montana here. And the reason for that is this big bulletin, because every home, really every property is vulnerable to flooding, but when you're in a high risk area, there's a higher probability for that. Now, flood insurance is an important form of economic protection against flooding. And again, that's if you have your loan paid off and you don't have a federally backed mortgage. We always encourage people to get flood insurance, whether it's through the National Flood Insurance Program or if it's in the private sector. If they can get it through the private sector, we encourage them to do that, because by far after these events, we see people recover quickly when they do have flood insurance. And I think on average, what they're saying is less than 7% of the people that live in that high risk area actually carry flood insurance. That's huge. Now, Miles City, there are a lot of folks that do carry it, so good job. Federal flood insurance is available to communities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And we kind of went over a little bit of community participation and the program itself in the last presentation as well. Now, when we talk about flood insurance, what's available now? Well, for a residential structure, the building coverage for the NFIP program covers up to $250,000. Now, there was some suggested and proposed changes that were provided over the last few years, especially in Montana, to see that increase to a higher amount. We don't know the status right now. That's kind of up in limbo, but we're hoping it will get picked up again. But that building coverage includes not just the building and its foundation, but looking at electrical and plumbing systems, central air and furnaces, refrigerators, and also permanently installed carpet. So there's a lot of stuff that's covered under building coverage. But again, it only goes up to 250,000. Now there's a lot of companies that provide supplemental insurance that will cover costs for the amount of a structure above and beyond that 250,000, but typically they require that first policy to be in place as well. Contents coverage for residential structure, you could purchase that contents coverage up to $100,000. And again, these are things that have been kind of proposed to increase that cost as well. Now, what I'm showing you here is really from what we'll call the legacy program that FEMA used to have. And I always try to keep this in because it really was a huge reflection of flood insurance premium comparison. For some context, the legacy program of flood insurance, the National Flood Insurance Program, was in place until just probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And what FEMA did was transition into more of an actuarial rating. But this shows you one of the factors that they're looking at when they're establishing these actuarial rates, and that's where is that lowest floor of that structure. If you have a structure that is below the base flood elevation, especially if it's a newer structure, with that legacy program, we were showing that that structure would be close to $10,000. I will say today it would probably be as high under the actuarial rating as 20 to 30,000 a year. That's very, very expensive. And there's other factors that go into it. That's just one part of it. But having that lowest floor, that's a huge one as far as costs and premiums. Now, if the structure was elevated above in that legacy program, you can see there is a significant cost savings. And that's still the same under this actuarial rating program as well. And if it was done to the national standard at that premium base flood elevation, again, this is just a really good comparison on where that lowest floor is placed could really impact somebody's flood insurance premium. Now, there's also requirements that are looked at, especially for crawl spaces. One of the things that is required is typically looking at an elevation certificate that's going to show the proper flood openings or vents. Did somebody have them certified? Were they FEMA approved? Or if somebody's using a flood vent that hasn't been previously certified or approved by FEMA, then it has to be engineered, and that information should be attached. This is information that insurance is going to look at as far as establishing those rates for a particular structure. One of the things I think, Miles, you guys are well versed in this. You guys understand this, that, there was a huge misconception around the state, and sometimes this still pops up, that folks don't have to worry about flood insurance because their home is outside the 100-year floodplain. Like, as we mentioned before, they're seeing an increase of flood claims occurring outside of that high-risk flood zone. And we saw that again in the 2022 flood event, and most flood events. Sometimes it's because the event that occurs is larger than what's depicted on those flood maps. It could be a situation where maybe a culvert was blocked or something happened with a bridge and it's causing backup in areas, but really, or maybe you have a situation like you guys had where it was localized flooding because of a rain event. And that can impact homes, again, that are in the floodplain and homes outside. But that percentage is actually going up because of the frequency and the events that are occurring that, again, are not representative of accurately as what we usually see when maps are being developed for a local community. So we are seeing insurance rates going up. We know that there is like a little bit of a surcharge, supplement costs are running national flood insurance program. Also, lenders are being more cautious. They're requiring, even though the new insurance, how they're doing the insurance ratings, you don't have to submit elevation certificates. We're still hearing from the Write Your Own companies that's something that's still being done. Also, the private insurance was something, that we saw. It was pretty hot and came into the market probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and it really started ramping up. And now what we're seeing is they're being very, very picky about what policies they're picking up. If you have any questions, like on the private insurance, flood insurance side, please reach out to our insurance commissioner. They have a lot of great stuff on their website. They can provide a lot more information on it. But we are seeing some private insurance companies either folding up or not selling in certain states. Now, Montana, we've been very fortunate. Last time I checked in with the insurance commissioner, we've been very fortunate in that we're still a lucrative market for a lot of the private flood insurance, which is great. And part of the reason is because of our higher state standards that have been in place since the 70s. We're a good bet. And when we do see disasters, yes, we've had homes that have been impacted. It's devastating, but a lot of the newer construction isn't being impacted as much. Also, there's supplemental policies like that are being offered now too, which is great as well. But one of the things is that we always recommend flood insurance in all flood zones. I live up on the hill, my husband and I, and it's we are not in a designated floodplain, but when it rains, the water comes down, and our neighbors right next to us always get water in their basements without fail. It just takes one little event that it could easily go in our basement just by the amount of water that comes down and how rapid it's coming down that hill. Also, lenders can require flood insurance or elevation information from anyone, whether you're in or out. Flood insurance policies, they do have that 30-day waiting period before they go effective, so that's huge. Also, policies with subsidized rates can transfer to new property owners, especially if there's no lapse in coverage, and that's a big selling point as well. Again, this is one of these things. I think you guys are well versed in Miles City. I know when I first started with the program, even at Flathead County as the local floodplain administrator, a lot of folks thought their homeowners insurance covered floods. Unfortunately, no. Standard homeowners insurance generally does not cover flood from surface water. That is just one of the things I think in the last 10 years, everybody's been really kind of trying to get that information out. So I think that's more well known. As I mentioned before, this FEMA went to an actual rating system. This is at Risk Rating 2.0. Now it is a premium rating engine refinement. At State of Montana, we've been, for years, once this came out, as a state, we've really imposed, or we've really brought up this issue of trying to get FEMA to be more transparent on this rating engine. They bring in so many factors. We can't give, quotes on what somebody's premium might be, like we used to be able to do with that legacy program. But I will tell you, things that are included in it, of course, are the floodplain maps, but also looking at base flood elevations, historic flood information, freeboard, how close a structure is to a water body. All these things are coming into play. Also, that building cost replacement. That is what makes up that premium. So that rating engine takes all that information into place. Now we are seeing rising insurance cost, and we're going to continue to see it. I mean, with the multitude of flooding events that continue to occur, like I mentioned, we have active flooding that's going on right now in, unfortunately, the Midwest, states, but we also on the East Coast. But, we talk about hurricanes. Yes, there was some flooding from, Helene and Milton and all the hurricanes that impacted the East Coast as well. But just seeing these atmospheric rivers that are coming in and dumping, having these very large precip events are really creating a situation where we're going to continue to see raises in especially flood insurance. But and we're going to see, all of us can probably contest, we're seeing raises in insurance across the board with car insurance, with homeowners insurance. Everything that's dealing with insurance is rising because of a lot of the natural disasters that are occurring. Now, some of the things that we talked about previously are about understanding discounts, and when it comes to discounts on premiums for insurance, these these items that are being highlighted are the very items that your local regulations actually address, which is helpful. So knowing that 2 feet of elevation from the lowest adjacent grade, it could save around 15 to 19% off of somebody's premium. So if somebody built a structure and they built it in compliance with the local regulations, which includes that 2 foot of freeboard, then they can save us, a good chunk off of that premium. Also, there's flood openings that, if they're done properly, offer discounts and CRS discounts, which Miles City has a very, very progressive CRS program. It's one of the reasons we're here tonight. All of these things can kind of help contribute to lowering premium costs for a property owner. So again, understanding that what I was kind of presenting on is very relevant to the risk rating 2.0, but it's helpful to know that your local regulations have already addressed ways to help mitigate not only flood losses and damages for a structure, but also ways to mitigate the reduction of insurance premiums. One of the things that risk rating 2.0 also looks at is the type of foundation. So they have different ratings when it looks at the foundation type. That's one of those multitude of factors that they're looking at as well. And then, of course, the big one is that first floor height. So that's what I was mentioning about where is that lowest floor for this, for that particular structure. Yes, their terminology is a little different than regulations now, but really we're looking at that living floor. Where is that located in reference to that base flood elevation? That's going to be huge. The other thing on the insurance that you might not be aware of is there is a provision about where your electrical system is located, your hot water heater thing. They are giving bigger discounts if it's on the second floor of your above your first floor height. So I mean, that's stuff that's not in the regulations, but it's information we're just trying to provide when we're looking at kind of how to hopefully lessen some of the impact of those insurance premiums on property owners. Now, new things that are coming. Back in December, we were putting on our floodplain resource seminar, and these slides are directly from their FEMA insurance person. Now, these are things we can't get clarification on if they've gone through, but these were already in motion by the end of last year, and we're hoping, it's my understanding that these have kind of gone through, but I'll provide some additional updates as I get clarification to Sam, and she can kind of get that up on her website. But one of the things is a direct to customer, the D2C, and then a big one is that monthly installment payment option. That was a huge one. That was something totally different. So that direct to customer quoting tool, it's a way that you can actually input your information. It will hopefully make your flood insurance more accessible, help to kind of close that insurance gap. Also looking at a way that it can kind of give quick information, strengthen that relationship with the person looking for insurance, and then also that property owners can and customers can directly interact with our rating platform. So I don't know, again, I know there's a few of us on it. I don't know how many have looked at that direct to customer quoting tool, if you guys have used it. And if you haven't, and you'd like some more information on it, we can reach out to FEMA and try to get this information out to you. But from the, I looked at it, played around with it a little bit, but from the other folks that have used it, I've heard it's been a real helpful as well. The other thing that, again, I think this was going to take a little bit of time. Hopefully it might be optional now. We just couldn't get clarification before then, are these monthly installment payment options. Now, there is some eligibility requirements, but this is the first time that the NFIP has offered this option. And what it is doing is typically if you were to buy an NFIP insurance policy, you would have to pay for the year on that policy all at once. What they are doing is on this monthly installment payment option is breaking that up over 12 years. So you can do monthly payments on it. And so in December, this was FEMA was bringing this up. They're talking about who's eligible, and again, these are their slides. This is really their program, but I'm just trying to get this information out to you. It's there's some limitations on it. It's available to any policy owners, not required to escrow their premiums. It's going to be offered to both new policy holders at the time of application and existing policy holders once they renew. So that's something to just kind of think about. They should be asking, for their on the insurance side if this is available. Now, policyholders will have that option to pay their entire premium still if that's what they want to do, or they can just do the 12 monthly installment payments. It's up to them. But once they make that decision, they can't change their payment schedule. They'll just have to wait till renewal to do that. So, asking like, will there be payment fees if paid through installment plan? No additional fees being charged for it. It was just a way to make it a little bit easier and help folks be able to kind of break up that cost for insurance premiums as well. But all of the same stuff is going to still be required. Now, that first payment, it looks like, is going to require not just the standard NFIP fees, and that includes the policy fee, the risk assessment fee, and the HFIA surcharge. That's going to be collected in that first payment, but the other ones should be less throughout the year. So it was supposed to start December 31. They did have the final rule published back in November. And the rule kind of removes the regulatory barriers that offer, so that they are able to offer that kind of installment payment option. And once they were, they were working on this process to make sure that it was in place. So again, not sure if that has rolled out yet. If we'll get some additional clarification on that, but hopefully it's available now. And if not, hopefully it's going to be available here fairly quickly. I think they were talking, those that were like renewing after like October 1st will be able to kind of opt into this. But new ones, I'm not sure if it's going to be available. Hopefully it is for you as well. But that's kind of some of the stuff that's new to insurance. Yeah, and if you have any questions, like I said, I'm I'm not an insurance expert. The best I can do for you is try to get you in contact with those who know a lot more about insurance than I do. We just wanted to make sure to kind of get that flood insurance information out to you for this event. And so Sam, with that, I think that's all I had for insurance. I don't know if you have any questions for me concerning what I presented on. And like I said, hopefully I can answer some of them or get you to somebody who can.
And we only have a few people online, but does anybody have any questions for Tracy on the flood insurance portion in that? Okay. With that, I guess we'll call it a night. I'm gonna pause this real quick.